Hi there, my name is Jeremy Cox, and this is my script VersionUp. To install VersionUp, it's the same as any other script. You take your script file that you downloaded, and you put that into your script UI panels folder, so it should live right here. So if you've installed VersionUp before, you'll see that there's actually a new folder here with a bunch of scripts these are all non-user interface versions of the individual functions in VersionUp. These can be used to add buttons to FTToolbar, or even be triggered by keyboard shortcuts. I'll show you these working in this video, but check out my other video for a full walkthrough on how to set that up. So what VersionUp does is it looks for a version number anywhere in a file name or file path in any footage you have imported into your project. So for example, here I have a PSD file, VersionUp _ v01. So there's the version number. And I actually have a few newer versions of this PSD file. So if I click the up arrow, you see it found a version 2, version 3, and a version 4. I can go back down to version 1. And another feature is if I hold down the Shift key and click the up or down arrows, I can actually increment all the way up to the newest version or the oldest version. So Shift clicking the up arrow will go all the way to version 4, and Shift clicking the down arrow will go all the way back down to version 1. You can also see that when I hover over these buttons, I get some little hints about some of the features that are in here. So clicking, shift click, etc. But I'll get into those a little more in a moment. You can now use keyboard shortcuts to trigger these things. Getting the keyboard shortcuts to work is a little complex to set up, so I have a separate video specifically devoted to getting that working. I'm selecting my footage here. I have it set to Option up arrow and Option down arrow on my keyboard. So Option up arrow, version 2, Option up arrow, version 3. And I can go all the way up to version 4 and back down. This is just using the keyboard. Similarly, Option Shift up arrow all the way to version 4, and Option Shift down arrow all the way back down to version 1. Another new feature in version 1.1 is you can use the same scripts to actually be triggered by FTToolbar. So FTToolbar is a very handy little script that you can use to create buttons to perform actions, whether it's adding effects or other things. But I can actually use them to trigger my scripts. And as I said, I will show you how to do this in a separate video. So I can select my footage, hit up or down, and increment again. So as you can imagine, this is actually very useful with multipass CG compositing, where you're dealing with lots of different passes, and you may have lots of different versions as you update your 3D scene. So if I select all of my 3D passes and hit the up arrow, you can see I'm going to version 2, all of the passes all at once, version 3, version 4, then went all the way to version 15. Now it went to version 15 because none of the other versions between existed, and VersionUp is very intelligent in that it can actually skip versions that don't exist. And similarly, if I hit the up arrow again, version 16 doesn't exist, so it doesn't even try to load version 16. So another new version in 1.1 is incrementing letters after version numbers. So often when I'm working in Photoshop and creating assets, I'll create an asset that's version 1, but then I'll have alternate versions, and rather than versioning them up like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I will actually do version 1A, version 1B, because they're just alternates. So I can actually increment between those by holding down the Option key and clicking on the up or down arrow. So you can see I just went from VO1A to VO1B. So you'll also notice I'm doing this on a folder, and I can increment numbers on folders and comps. So it's not actually changing the path or loading any footage. It's purely just looking at the name and changing a version there, but it's doing the same thing as it would do with a path. So there are a few settings here in VersionUp. Nothing too important. You shouldn't need to change this stuff, but just in case, it's here. Safe mode. What safe mode does is it keeps something like this from being a version number. You can see how it's MOV 1920. That's like, it's a QuickTime movie. Its width is 1920. I wouldn't think that's a version because it's clearly something else. But if I don't have safe mode on, you can see it actually treats that as a version number. With safe mode on, what it will do is it expects there to be something separating the version number from any letters or numbers before it. So it can be a period, it can be a space, anything, but usually you would have like an underscore or something before your version. So that just, having safe mode on just ensures that that doesn't become a version number. So suppress errors. If I try to version this right now, you'll see a little error saying that it couldn't find a version number in there. that's good. But if you don't want to see errors, you can check that checkbox and it will hide errors rather than show them to you. Hide the settings button. What this does is actually hides this little question mark. Now, personally, this is such a simple little script. I find that feels a little cluttered having that little additional bit to the UI. So if you check the hide settings button, it will hide it, and it will actually error saying, or alert you saying that you can still get the settings back by Option Shift clicking on either of these two buttons. So you can see I have no button there, but if I Option Shift click, I can get my settings back. So whichever you prefer. I kind of like it without it, but you can keep it if you want. Version prefix, by default it's V, which is probably what you're going to want it as, but you can change that if you need to. And then search range, remember when I went from version 4 to version 15, in theory it could have gone from version 1 to version 25 and still worked. Version 26 or version 30 and it would have failed because it can only, you need to limit how far it would search, so it's not an infinite loop. But presumably you're not skipping that many versions at once, but if you are, you might want to change this. So that's version up. Check out my other tutorial on how to configure some of those keyboard shortcuts and FD toolbar things. But other than that, I think that is it, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you.